So here's what we're doing today. You are here because you have been offered a position on one of the paraprofessional staffs. So hey, this is the first time we're in person today. Congratulations. You went through a heck of a interview process, right? Especially for our new folks. So raise your hand if you are new to any of the staffs this year. So brand new, you've never done anything before. Yay. So raise your hand if you're a returner. So if you're a returner on any of the staff. So I want to point out some of the professional staff. So professional staff, raise your hands. Let's just wave. So thanks for our professional staff for being here. So we are doing things a bit differently. So if you are a returner, we've never done spring training as a whole before. So this is new, but the reason that we're doing this year is to get some of these kind of collaborative things out of the way. So when we come back in August, we can really focus a bit more on those individualized staffs. So we will still have some overlap. We'll still do some fun things together in August, but we wanted to kind of knock out some of the, I would consider more policy types of stuff that involve everybody, right? Because the RAs will do their own kind of Title IX training and conduct training, and so will the PMs, and so will the peer mentors, but we wanted to do some overarching things together. So welcome to the first overarching session. So here's what you can expect for the next few weeks. So today, this is the first collaborative training today. We're talking a lot about Title IX today, and what that means for all of you. And if you are a returner, some of this will be a reminder, right? And it should be, because every year I have to be reminded about this. The policies change all the time. So some of the PowerPoint or the presentation will look a little bit familiar, and then there's a completely new section, okay? So stay with us today. You will meet again a week from today, so March 31st is our next full training. We are 2 to 4 next week. So the only reason we had to do noon today is because Greek Life has the bowling thing this afternoon, and we have to shift, right? So next week is March 31st. We're going to be in this room again. No lunch next week because we're a bit later. Okay, so eat before you come. And then the next time is Saturday, April 6th. Now again, you all got this in your contracts or in emails. We'll continue to send you reminders. April 6th is MU Leads. We want you to go to that conference. That's on a Saturday. So here's the thing, you have to register for the conference. We, your professional staff members, are not registering you as a group. So you actually have to get on, click the link. It's been sent to your email a few different times. We'll send it again. Click the link and register, because we want to make sure that you have a name tag when you go to sign in, and that's how we're going to keep track of who goes. Okay, so just to keep tabs, today, next Sunday, and then the following Saturday, which is April 6th. And then we have 2 different days in April where we need you to sign up to get VAN certified. So here's our expectation. So I'm going to say it once. Are you ready? This has changed over the years. So it used to be yeah, please get certified. We'd really appreciate that. It would help us a lot in August and through the year. And some of you were like, okay, and then some of you did, and some of you didn't. And you were able to skirt by without getting called out. Hi, I'm calling you out. So we need you to get VAN certified. It is an expectation of the position. So PMs, listen to me. If you don't get VAN certified, you are not on staff. Okay, so those are my teeth. Those are my teeth. Okay, very mean teeth. Okay, so for the other staffs, here's their teeth too. Get VAN certified or you're not on staff. Okay, okay, so you have to get VAN certified. Now, listen to me. If you don't have a driver's license, you can't get VAN certified, and we're okay with that, okay? So don't go get a driver's license. But most of you do. But if you don't worry. But here's the other thing too. If you say to me, Molly, I am scared to drive a big van, that's great. We'll put you in a little one. No big deal. They got little vans. But I need you to be VAN certified. It helps us. So when we are transporting first-year students around, or I say, hey, I need someone to take this person to the store, whatever, I can call on any of the 125 of you, and some you all are VAN certified. So there are 2 dates in April. You have to go to one of them. You have to get VAN certified. If you say to me, oh, I'm scared, I was really bad in the driver's test, this is not what this is. Okay, so you just take an online test. It's like a little online test. You click the links, you pass the test. It's not a big deal. Very simple, okay? And then what they're going to do is they're going to put you in a van, and you're going to drive around the block, and they're going to talk to you. You're going to turn a few corners, and you're going to park. Not parallel parking, not even next to something. You're just going to park, and they're going to say, congratulations, you passed. Okay, this is not hard, folks. Okay, so if you have anxiety about that driver's test, it's not that. Okay, so I've showed you my teeth. We've all showed you our teeth. You've got 2 times in April. You have to get band certified or you can't be on staff. So I'm just putting it out there. Great. Perfect. We're great. Okay. For you, for next week, when you're together, again, a week from today, 2 to 4, in the same space-ish. Are we here, Starla, in this room? Okay. I want you to sit with people you don't know. So I don't want you to connect or like hover back to those people that you're really familiar with, this table right here. Okay, so I really want you to push yourself and like sit other places with people that you don't know as well, okay? So just really try for me. So today we're going to talk about Title IX on college campuses. So before we get started, like into the Prezi, tell me what you know about Title IX. So what do you know? What does Title IX make you think of? What does it trigger for you? School. Yep, so we know it's connected to education. What else do you know about Title IX? Yes? Athletics, good job. What else?
Gender equality.
Yep, good job. So gender equality. So that, in a nutshell, those 3 answers are really like the bread and butter of Title IX. So it's connected back to schools and institutions that are federally funded. So not just school, but absolutely school in our context. Has to do with sports. We've seen a big push in sports equality from Title IX. And then it most recently goes back to gender equality at those institutions that receive federal funding, okay? So we're going to talk through that today. I want you to ask questions. You don't have to wait till the end, so please interact. I like that a lot more. So I'm really passionate about Title IX, have been for a long time. So we're going to do what I consider kind of the history of Title IX, so where it came from, why it started, and then present day, why it should matter to you, right? So we're going to talk through a little bit of that. But first I want to introduce you to my friend. So this is Dr. Bernice Sandler. Okay, so we'll call her Bernie, right? Because she looks like she could be a Bernie, right? So I actually was lucky enough to hear Bernice, Dr. Sandler, speak at a conference, oh gosh, I think it was probably 7 or 8 years ago now. And it was a Title IX conference. And to have someone who was like the grandmother, so she's considered the grandmother of Title IX. And so you need to understand her story a little bit. So Bernice was an educated woman. So why do we know she's an educated woman? Doctor, thank you. Yes, very educated, right? So terminal degree. So really passionate about psychology, really passionate about like sociology, that kind of field. So educated woman, lived in Maryland, and she applied for a job at, I think it was College Park. Okay, so University of Maryland, College Park, I think. It's a bit fuzzy for me right now. So she applied for a job, and this is back in the 60s, did not get the position, and she saw men who were getting those positions that she's applying for on that campus, because she worked on that campus, who were less qualified than she, right? And so, as you can imagine, that made her very upset, as it would any of us, right? So you see people who are less qualified, don't have the degree that you have, don't have the experience that you have getting the job over you. And because she was an internal candidate, she saw it, right? So she would like work in her office and see someone else get that position and be so frustrated. But she tried to say different things, tried to make a push for this, but at that time there were no protections for, and I'm going to go back to the language that Johanna used, this gender-based equality. So it didn't matter. So basically, if you were a male candidate, you would get chosen over a female candidate because there were no laws that protected equality at that point, right? Because we're talking mid-60s. So this is even before like civil rights movement, right? So we're like kind of in the middle of that civil rights movement, but we have not pushed past racial equality. We have definitely not hit gender equality yet. Okay, so that's Dr. Bernice Sandler. So here's kind of the timeline. So who can tell me about who this person is? Do you remember this person? Some of the returners have seen this image before. Do you remember her name? That's okay. Take a stab. Anybody? Catherine Schweitzer. Okay, so this is Catherine Schweitzer. So Catherine Schweitzer has the 261 number on. So what is this an image of? Yeah, Colin.
She entered a race that she wasn't allowed to be in because it was female.
Right, so do you remember what race it was? Yep, do it. It was the Boston Marathon. Okay, so Boston Marathon, you know, right? So to enter the Boston Marathon, how do you qualify for that?
Run fast.
You have to run fast. You have to run fast. So you have to run fast to qualify for the Boston Marathon. And even today, you actually have to qualify. So you have to run a different marathon, get a certain time, and get kind of invited to be in the Boston Marathon. That's kind of how marathons work, right? So Catherine Schweitzer, at that point, you didn't have to qualify. So it's not how it is now. But she, what is it? Not not applied for the race. She signed up. She registered, okay. Woo, folks, woo, okay, right? So she registered for the race, and she put K. Schweitzer. So she signed everything, K. Schweitzer, K. Schweitzer. So they did not know that she was a woman. And this was back when the Boston Marathon, you were not allowed to run the Boston Marathon unless you were a man. And that wasn't just Boston, that was any marathon. Do you know why that was? Why couldn't women run in marathons?
Wasn't there a rule like they were too fragile?
Yes. So there was medical reasoning that said that women's reproductive systems could not handle a race that long. So, folks, watch. By going like this, it's going to hurt my baby. Okay? So basically, that's what it said, right? That's what it said. Folks, the baby's fine. Okay, we're good. But back in the day, if you ran, that could hurt your reproductive health, and women were not allowed to run. Okay, so that's like how that works. So Catherine Schweitzer, she registered with K. Schweitzer. She did not start from the start line because she knew that they would find her, right? They would see her. So she kind of snuck in within the first mile. And this man in the black, this guy right here, is actually like the race coordinator. And he like ran after her and like tried to tackle her to get her out of the race. So this is like one of those like iconic images. So Catherine Schweitzer still lives. She actually was able to finish the race because a lot of people protected her. So this is like some of these folks behind her, like her brother-in-law. So like this is her brother-in-law. Some of these folks are like her family members that surrounded her. So she finished the race. And yeah, good for her, right? But that was, again, back before equality within, like, athletics existed. Did not exist. So 2 big names you should know. Bernice Sandler, godmother of Title IX, grandmother of Title IX, and then Catherine Schweitzer, the first woman to run the Boston Marathon. Here are the dates that are important. So this goes back to, someone said sports. This has to do with sports. Stephanie, good job. So here's what happened. So June 23rd, 1972, was the first time that Title IX was introduced and then was passed into law. So 1972. So what year was your mother born? 60s, 70s. Okay. So how many of your parents were born before 1972? Okay, mine too. So if your parents, if your mother was born before 1972, she did not... Like, she would not have been able to play sports in school. Didn't exist for her. And there was no gender-based kind of protections for her if she applied for a job, anything like that. So Title IX prohibits sex discrimination in any type of an educational program. So any type of educational program, right? So it could be school or activity that receives federal aid. So again, federal aid. So that's like colleges, that's high schools, right? The whole thing. So here's what Title IX is simplified. It's the Education Amendment Act of 1972 that was designed to limit discrimination by sex and gender and sexual harassment in public schools and other like government-funded things, okay? Other things. Schools are prohibited from restricting admission or participation in an activity based on sex. In terms of sports, male and female students have to have the same opportunities. So again, I'm going to read that because this is a really good sentence. Prohibited from restricting admission or participating in an activity. So it goes back to Bernie. So we can't tell her that she can't get that job because she's a woman, which is what was happening to her. And it goes back to these like other sports for women and sports for girls. Before, you would see athletic teams at high school. So pre-1972, you'd have football, you'd have basketball, you'd have track, you'd have baseball. You have all these things for men. And they didn't have to have a single sport for women. Not a single one. Or if they did, if you were lucky enough to have a school that had a sports team, the men would have had the nice jerseys, the nice locker room. They would have had better facilities. And the women were like cut and pasting like felt numbers on their shirts to be able to play and travel. Like, and that is legit. So I went to this conference with Coach Lori Kearns, Coach Deb Kick, and those are like coaches on campus, right? And like Deb Kick has this amazing story where she played volleyball in high school, but it was like right on the cusp of 1972. And she said that they had to buy their own t-shirts and like cut out felt letters or felt numbers and like hot glue them on. And she said it was so embarrassing because they played and like the letters would start to peel off because they were hot glued on and they were sweating, right? And then they had to go home and like launder their own uniforms, where the men's uniforms were collected and laundered for them, and they got like lunches, and they got driven to their games, and like the girls' like parents had to figure out how to get them to games. So when we're talking about equality, that is not equal, right? So that is far from equal, in fact. So this is what Title IX did. It created a level ball game. It created like a level field for both of those women's and men's programs to exist, right? Where they didn't have to before. So for me, it's like pretty personal, and this is funny. So I want to introduce you to my mom. This is my mom. So my mom was born in 1951, and I say, shush, don't tell her I told you that, right? Okay. She graduated high school in 1970. Okay, so what is that? 2 years before Title IX, right? So here's what you should know about my mom. She's the youngest of three. She is an avid sports fan. In fact, she's here this weekend, and we were at this event yesterday. They started talking about the Final Four, and I had to remind her to keep her voice down. Or like, not the Final Four, but March Madness. And I had to remind her to keep her voice down because she was getting very heated about her like bracket stuff. I'm like, Mom, this is not this serious, right? So she's an avid sports fan. She loves Ohio State. She loves the Cleveland Browns. Like, we're Ohio people, so that's like where this comes from. So on her 16th birthday, she had a Dallas Cowboy birthday cake. So we're not talking like Sweet 16, rainbows and unicorns and things like that. Like, Sandy Pawsey wanted a Dallas Cowboy football cake. Because she really just loves football, this woman. But she graduated high school in 1970, which means she never had the opportunity to play a sport. Okay? There were no t-ball leagues for her. There were no soccer leagues for her. It didn't exist. And so this whole time, I grew up thinking that my mom was not competitive and she was not good at sports. I just thought that. But I was put in t-ball from the time I could swing the bat. I played softball all throughout high school and college. That was a lie. I played softball all throughout high school. Did not play softball in college. Played volleyball all throughout high school. So was constantly in sports, but I knew my mom's narrative wasn't that, so I assumed that she wasn't good enough to play. Isn't that funny? Like, I created that myself. So it wasn't until I went to this Title IX conference, I connected the dots with 1970 when she graduated and 1972, which is when the law passed. And I called her and said, why didn't you play sports in high school? And she's like, because there weren't any. And I said, did you want to? She's like, yeah. And it like blew my mind because I had created this narrative that my mom wasn't good. Isn't that nuts? That like the webs that we weave for things, right? In fact, my mom probably would have been good. And she said to me, my proudest moment when it came to sports, and this is kind of cool, she said, in high school we had, like, I think it would be like the closest to like a 0 hour, right? So like high school people know the 0 hour. So before the day starts, you could go early and go in and like, they had like an open gym essentially. And so she would go in high school, she was a sophomore, and she said that they would have this like organized, like, what is it called? It's like hockey, street hockey, where it's not like, it's like a ball. What is that? Field hockey? Field hockey? Okay, so you play with a ball and sticks, right? So they had an organized like field hockey thing. And so my mom like organized a team of girls. She was the coach, of course, right? And they won. And she, to this day, will say, like, I was so proud of that because we didn't have anything, and we were the ones that won, right? And I thought, holy smokes, my mom could have been good at sports, and I had created this narrative that she just didn't care. In fact, she just wasn't given the chance. Crazy, okay? So that's when Title IX started to hit home to me. It was when I realized my mom didn't have the opportunity. And in fact, when she graduated high school, she said to me, I said, why are you a nurse? My mom has been a nurse for 45 years. She just graduated last year. Dang it, retired. Holy smokes. My words today, folks. So my mom retired from 45 years of nursing. But she said when she graduated from high school, here were her options. She could have been a teacher, a secretary, a switchboard operator. So like, one moment please, you know, like connecting phone calls and things, or a nurse. Those were her options. That was what she was encouraged. She had 4 options. And so it makes me giggle a little bit when you come into my office in crisis, and you're allowed to, that's what my office is for, and you say, oh my God, I don't know what I'm doing with my life. I have so many options. And I think, thank God. Thank God you have options. Sandy had 4. And she was a damn good nurse, folks. Damn good. The best in the field. But she had 4 options. Thank God you have so many that you don't know where you're going. Right? So pick a door, any door. If you don't like that door, go to a different one. I don't care. You've got great options. Okay? So I think some perspective is often helpful, right? Okay, so that is why Title IX is personal. You get it? Okay, good. So let's move to the present. Are you ready?
Oh yeah.
Let's move. Okay, so here's where it gets a bit sticky. A bit sticky. So Title IX was history and was sports. Thank you for these over here. Is education in school. But I'm going to connect it back to what Johanna said. So Johanna said it protects. Do you remember what the words were that you used?
Gender equity or...
Okay, yep, gender equity. So it creates equity for different genders, right? And again, these federally funded places. So before 2011, so where were you in 2011?
Seventh grade.
Okay, so 6th grade, raise your hand, I was in 6th grade. 7th grade, I was in 7th grade. 5th grade, I was in 5th grade. No. 2011, 5th grade? Freshman will be 6th grade. Okay, so 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade, so somewhere in there. Okay, so in 2011, I know Paul and Carrie and Starla and I were all here at Milliken. Okay, so we were all here, doing our thing, rocking and rolling, right, living the good life. And this letter came out. And this letter came out from the Department of Civil Rights, or Office of Civil Rights. We call it OCR, Office of Civil Rights. And that is just a place, it's an office, in a federally funded place. It's like this big-time office, like it's in the government. And they wrote a letter, and it's fondly referred to as the Dear Colleague Letter. And so the Office of Civil Rights put this letter out and put it out into the universe and said, Dear higher ed colleagues, right? You know it's going to be good when it's like something like that, right? Thank you for all your work with like conduct and sexual assault and harassment, but P.S. you've been doing it wrong. And based on Title IX from 1972, which created really great equity for sports and things like that and jobs and all that good stuff, but this whole sexual harassment, sexual assault, sexual misconduct on college campuses you've been handling wrong because you haven't been providing good equity, so we're going to go back to that equity kind of thing, between genders, between the survivors and the alleged accused, right? So it's this Dear Colleague letter, and it started to call into question how processes overall were not equitable. Oh. I remember working in residence life at that time and thinking, oh, what is this? And I was like working with student conduct at that point, doing conduct related to sexual assault, harassment, and violence. And a lot of people were like the little red flags started to go up. What do you mean we're not doing this right? This is how the process has existed for a very long time. What do you mean? We're doing good work. We're creating equity. But we weren't. And so basically what the Dear Colleague letter said is that we have to re-examine the way that we address sexual misconduct, sexual harassment, and charges of that nature on college campuses. We have to create a better system. It's not that it was completely wrong. It's just that it wasn't right. Okay? So that's what they were saying. So it calls into question what is equity? What is fair? And I don't even love to use the word fair, right? But basically, Title IX and the Dear Colleague letter, DCL, changed how campuses treat and investigate gender-based decision-making and violence on campus. So it created a lot of these shades of gray. What do I mean by shades of gray? What do you think? Yes?
It's not clear cut.
Perfect. So it's not, if it's shades of gray, it's not black or white. So black or white is this idea that there is a universal truth, like it's a universal good or bad, right? But really, it's more gray. So give me an example of something conduct-related, doesn't have to be sexual misconduct-related, but conduct-related that is kind of gray. What do you think? Give me an example, something you see on a college campus that you're like, oh, this is not black and white.
A conduct issue that happens with a person who's not a student.
Okay.
It's like a student and then a not a student.
That's a perfect example. So a conduct issue of a student and not student, yep, that's kind of gray. That is not easy for us to determine, right? Because who is right? Give me another example of a shades of gray.
Conduct issue where there's no external witnesses.
Okay, so we've just got two people involved, and those are the two people. And nobody saw anything else. There was nobody else around. So again, it's whose story is right, right? So a conduct officer, that's really hard for us. Okay, what else is the shades of gray? Yep. Okay, so just an off-campus issue in general, right? Could be, absolutely. What else?
Anything
Thank you, high five. Heidi Book, anything involving drugs and alcohol, yes, okay, because again, it's like, I wasn't smoking marijuana, even though you kind of smell like marijuana, your eyes are very dilated, you've got, like, you've taped dryer sheets to your wall. Your fan is blowing out the window. Yes, those are all very, and it's February, and your window's open. Yeah, you're right, you weren't smoking marijuana at all. You're right, you weren't. Yep. I had someone once tell me, talk about shades of gray. So this is a young hall director, very young, green, very green, 22 years old, Molly Posey, right out of, right in grad school. I like knock on the door one night because they were very loud, and I've got like 3 women in a circle who have what looked to be like some tobacco, loose leaf tobacco in the middle of the floor, right? And like some rolling papers. And I said, "Hi, what are you doing? It's 2 o'clock in the morning. You're a bit loud. We've got some complaints. Oh, we're just rolling our own cigarettes." I'm like, what? At 2 o'clock in the morning in a residence hall in a circle? Like, okay. That was gray. That's gray. Okay, so we've got some shades of gray, right? Or you could say that's pretty black and white, like whatever it is, but it seemed pretty gray to me at the time. So you get what I mean by shades of gray. Something that is not clear cut, right? What creates shades of gray when it comes to like sexual misconduct? What could be some factors in creating something that is gray when it comes to sexual misconduct types of things?
Maybe like shame or guilt.
Shame or guilt, consent, lack of consent can be very gray. Well, I thought that person said yes. It seemed like it was a yes, right? That's gray for either party. Yep. Time can be gray. I would even say, Yep, that's good. Okay, so that's good. I think you get it, right? So timing can be gray, who was around. We talk about going back to if there was only 2 people there. All of that can be considered shades of gray, right? And that makes it really difficult for whom? Us, folks who are adjudicating for sure. That's difficult for us, but it's also just difficult for the folks involved, right? So please understand that gray isn't just here when it comes to decision making. Gray is here in the middle of the situation, right? So that is what's tricky. And so in some ways, it created this shades of gray type of environment. So I want to talk a little bit about student conduct. So this might be some kind of repeat information for the RA staff because I think those RA staffs are like ingrained to understand student conduct really well. But I would say 1/5 of the room is RAs and 4/5 of the room are non-RAs. So that's why it's important to kind of talk through conduct. So here's what the student conduct policy at Millikan kind of is. Here's our theory, right? So this is kind of our approach. The university seeks to resolve each conduct case by, number 1, stopping. So stopping the misconduct immediately. So if something has happened, we want to stop what's happening, right? So that's like step 1. Step 2 is preventing. So how do we prevent any reoccurrence of this misconduct with this particular person or these particular people? And then repairing. How can we repair the harm that was done so that everybody can continue to operate in a healthy way for you to be a student? So that's the whole point. So we want to stop what's happening, we want to make sure it doesn't continue to happen, and we want to repair. So does anyone know kind of what this approach is called? So it's kind of a restorative justice approach. So restorative justice is this whole idea of like acknowledging what is happening, figuring out who is the harmer or who is the harming party, and then making sure that that person doesn't continue to harm and that the harm has been repaired, right? So this is the whole process of this. So I want you to understand that this is how Millikan approaches things. This is different than some schools. We've done this for a long time. This is different than the court of law system. The court of law is not typically a restorative justice process, but this is an educational process. And it does not make sense for us to come in and just like say, slap you on the wrist, bad, good, like that was bad. Now we're gonna fine you. And now you're done. That's not our process. We want people to like learn from the process. So this is really little, I'm gonna zoom in, but there's a huge difference between our process at Millikan and this like court of justice process or criminal justice system. So here's what I want to point out. Now folks, the reason that we're doing this Okay, the reason that this is like kind of the new part of the presentation this year is because I have had, within the last month or so, 5 people approach me and say that they, number 1, didn't know who to go to for help on campus. Number 2, didn't understand what our student conduct process was related to like sexual misconduct. And number 3, did not think that our process involving sexual misconduct and Title IX and things like that was good. And folks, that like burns my buns a little bit. Okay, and I'll be honest. The reason that like makes me a little bit frustrated is because you know that I stand up in front of every first year student and talk about Title IX and talk about consent and talk about who to turn to for help. We have 4 hours, maybe 5 hours, dedicated to that in new student welcome week alone. Like that is a lot of time. That is more time than we spend in anything else in welcome week. We like talk about it on stage. We talk about it in those little fam groups. We talk about it a lot. So for someone to come to me and say, I don't know who to go to, what? What do you mean you don't know who to go to? You can go to anybody in here, anybody, right? You can go to any professional staff member, any faculty member. You can go to anybody. You can go to the security office. You can go to a lady in the dining room. Like, right? So you can go to anybody. And for someone to say they didn't know who to go to just like kills my soul a little bit, right? So I want you to know this. So we are talking about it today because you are the best advocates we have to help people understand what the process is, okay? So here's the difference. Okay, so this is the student conduct process. We are holistically developmental. So again, we are restorative in nature, we are supportive, and we're non-adversarial. So give me some examples of like what holistically developmental means. What does that mean? Yep.
So like how people grow as a person.
Yes, beautiful. That's beautiful. We put on the t-shirt. That's lovely. To help people grow as a person. So holistically developmental. We want people to grow through the process. And that means the person who is the survivor, we want that person to grow, and we want the person who's the alleged accused. We want that person to grow. And again, there could be more than 2 people, but we're just for right now. Give me an example. So we already talked about restorative, right? So this whole idea of like stopping, figuring it out, and like figuring out the harm. And then supportive and non-adversarial. What does that mean? So what does it mean to be supportive? What does it mean to be non-adversarial? What do you think? Yep.
Like not calling the person like the villain, like not villainizing anyone.
Correct. Beautiful. So my language is really intentional today. So I'll say survivor, right? So I'm using this like survivor-based language instead of, what could be another term I use?
Victim.
Perfect. You're very quick to that, right? Victim, right? So I don't want people to feel like they've been victimized. So this survivor-based language. And then I'm also saying a term, the alleged accused. Yeah, what do you think?
Innocent until proven guilty.
Yeah, innocent until proven guilty. And in fact, even in our process, we're not trying to prove someone is guilty. Like, I will never use the term guilty in any student conduct, right? So innocent until proven guilty is very what? Very punitive and very court of law, right? So that we do not operate off of this like 100% innocence kind of thing because we don't look for innocence and guilt. We are looking for harm, and that's very different. So Paul Letty can harm me by wearing the color pink. Oh, I hate the color pink. Oh, I'm harmed. I'm so harmed, right? but that's not me like guilty or innocent or anything, right? So this whole idea of non-adversarial, can someone give me some type of like example of that? Non-adversarial. But again, in a shades of gray system, I believe that both stories have some truth in them. That there is not just one side that's right and one side that's wrong, okay? And we want to build relationships with folks. Thank you. Thank you. We want to build relationships with folks in the way that they believe that they can come back into my office after a process and feel like they're supported still on campus, right? So that's the whole point. We don't want you to just like see Paul, who is often someone who adjudicates the process and is like the decider. We want people to be able to go back to Paul and feel good about that relationship. Okay. We also are adjudicated, can run the spectrum from informal to highly structured. Okay, so in the situation of the case, It could be informal. What would be an example of an informal resolution or informal process? Yeah. Yes, talking it out. Having a mediation, maybe with an RA. So again, it could go back to this alcohol thing or a roommate issue. A roommate issue is a student conduct case. If the RA can figure it out, that's an informal process. Good job. We don't have to have a hearing panel for that. That's awesome. What would be a highly structured process? A hearing panel. Good job. Good job. So that could be then having faculty and staff come in and listening to both sides of the story and making a decision. That would be a very structured process. Okay, so they run the both. Number 3, students expected to represent themselves. Students expect to represent themselves. Charges can occur for behaviors in the code that may not be violations of the law. So again, Millikan has its own process. So it's not a court of law system. So we are willing to, here's a good example. Marijuana is illegal in the state of Illinois, right? If you are caught smoking marijuana on campus, do we turn you into the police? No, we don't. Okay? Yep, and so that's our own process, but technically, if it's illegal, we should turn you into the police. Same thing with underage drinking, but we don't do that, right? Because again, we're trying to be developmental in the process. Number 4, responsible versus non-responsible. So we use this language. What would this language be in a court of law? Guilty and innocent, right? So it is who is responsible and who is non-responsible. Okay, so that's our language difference. Number 5, standard of evidence is preponderance. I know you know what this means, but what does that mean?
It looks like a duck, quacks like a duck.
Good job. That's my favorite example. Okay, if it looks like a duck, if it quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck. Do I need to do a DNA test on that? No. In a court of law, you would. You have to prove that it's a duck. We don't have to prove it's a duck. So I'm going to go back to this marijuana example. If I open the door, and you've got dryer sheets taped to your wall, and it smells like marijuana, and your eyes are dilated, and the fan is pointing out, that's a duck. That is a damn big duck. Okay? Okay, so you get it, right? So that's a preponderance of evidence. I don't need 100% proof. So that's what makes it tricky too. So I'm going to go back to this example that you used before, but we've got 2 people in a room and we're off campus. Where's the duck? Who's the duck? It's really hard. Okay? Great. Number 6. Legal rules of evidence do not apply in campus conduct cases. I'm not going to go through that. It's exactly what it says. Legal rules of evidence do not apply in campus conduct cases. Because again, our process is different. Number 7, cases are confidential and they're in compliance with FERPA. So confidential cases mean we aren't going to tell your parents. We aren't going to tell your professors. We aren't going to make it public, right? Unless you ask for that information to be shared and then we would have you share it, right? We're not going to do that for you. Number 8, while due process exists, minimal procedural restraints are used. So what is due process? What is that? Can someone kind of explain that for me? Yeah? Say it again. Ooh, okay. So it's the process that we investigate. So it is like investigation. So everybody gets a fair chance, and so there's a process in which we do things. And so if you start to jump the gun, then because a person has a right for due process, and we want to make sure that those rights are upheld, but if something happens and due process can't be fulfilled, then I think that there's some issues then with our process, right? So basically due process exists, but we don't try to, again, it's not a court of law, we're not putting a lot of restraints on that. And then finally, sanctions are not predetermined. So what does that mean? Sanctions, so the final sanctions are not predetermined.
We're not just going to say every single person who's caught doing this.
Yes.
This.
Yes, good job. So every person that drinks alcohol under the age of 21 is not, they don't have to then do X, Y, Z. It depends. Okay, so the example that I like to use is that Johanna could be 18. She goes out, she drinks, she comes back to her residence hall room, she goes to sleep. Okay, did she violate the policy? Absolutely. Great. Or Megan Carey could go out under the age of 21, she could drink, then she could come back to her residence hall room, tear down a bulletin board, pee in the hallway, and then vomit outside of someone's door. Did she violate the policy? Yes. How? Okay, so who would receive the tougher sanction? Megan Carey, right? They both violated policy, but if we just had this Everyone who violates the drinking code then has to write a reflection paper. It seems to me that there's some unequitable things happening between Johanna's case and Megan's case, right? Okay, so that's why we don't have these predetermined sanctions. It really depends. Okay. Punitive in nature, with some rehabilitative efforts, can be adversarial. So punitive in nature, again, slap on a wrist, here's your fine, here's your jail time. That's what it is, right? Number 2, respondent is likely represented by legal counsel. We do not have legal counsel in our process. You can have an advocate. You can absolutely have someone with you that is a lawyer if you want to, or your mom, or your best friend, doesn't matter. But that is not required. You're not assigned legal counsel in our process. But you would be in a court of law. Number 3, charges may only occur for violations of the law. So we absolutely might charge you in our process, but we might not. It just depends. Again, it goes back to that, like, our sanctions are not predetermined. Number 4 is the language of guilty versus non-guilty, or guilty versus innocent. And again, we don't use that. Number 5, standard of evidence is clear and convincing and beyond a reasonable doubt. So that is, again, this 100%. We'd have to do a DNA test on the duck. Milliken does not have to, right? Number 6, records are public. This is my husband's favorite thing in the whole world, is that he gets on that, like, Macon County database, and he loves to look things up. Loves to. Wants to see what you've been charged for, wants to see how you've been, oh yes. Yep, that is what my husband does. He loves to do that, right? So he likes to see, oh, who's in, oh, I know that person. Oh, yep, okay, right? Yep, you can do it too. You can do it, right? So you just get on, like, the Macon County clerk and look that stuff up because it's all public. And again, we don't make your student conduct things public, right? Because we follow FERPA, so that protects you. Due process is a guiding tenet of the court of law system. Number 8, many offenses have prescribed outcomes. So again, if you're underage, it's just like a $1,500 fine with like 8 days of court time or whatever, right? And then number 9, it's a cumbersome and long time to the resolution. So folks, if you have a sexual misconduct like issue on campus, you can choose to also go through a court of law process. So you can have 2 simultaneous processes. You can go through the Milliken's process, and you can choose to go through the court process. The court process is going to take 3 times as long as the Milliken process. Because do you know how fast we have to kind of figure out and wrap up Title IX cases? Do you know what the day is?
60.
Good job, 60 days. Yeah, good job. That's right? 60? Yeah. It's good to double check. The way that my mind is today, it's very good to double check. So 60 days to start and end a student conduct case related to Title IX. It is not 60 days in the court of law. You'll be lucky to have even a hearing by that time, right? So you just have to be patient and work through the process. So huge differences, right? Huge differences. And I think that's really important to understand and know. Okay, we're moving along. So here's what Title IX is not at Milliken. And I like to do it this way because there's a lot of things that it is, but we need to talk about what it's not. We do not have a zero tolerance policy. What would be a zero tolerance policy for a Title IX conduct case? What does that mean? If we had a zero tolerance policy, what does that mean? Yes. So anybody that is found responsible would be suspended from the institution. That would be zero tolerance. We don't have that. In fact, I think, so I've been here for 12 years. I can think of, God, I don't even know if I can think of one thing. I mean, I just don't know. Paul just went 2. We've had 2 instances, okay? And so and we have a lot of conduct cases, right? So we've had 2 where we've actually had to remove people from campus for a period of time and say you can't come back for X amount of years or never, right? So if we had a zero tolerance policy, it would be everybody who was accused and found responsible would be removed from campus. But we don't because of why?
We're restorative.
Good job, we're restorative. We want to repair the harm, right? We are not a legal system, and I think I've proven that in the slide before, right? So we are not the legal system. We are not black and white, so we are what?
Gray.
Shades of gray, yep, we are very gray, and that's a good thing. Even though it makes it harder sometimes, we are very gray. And then it is not easy. In fact, I think sometimes the court of law can be seen as easier because you have to have these hard proof evidence, even though it takes a long time. And there isn't always a winner at the end. This process is not easy, but it's necessary. And I think that's the beauty of it, and that's why I enjoy Title IX, is because there are some times when you start a process, you have 2 people who are just so upset, and you are just starting the process. By the middle and the end, sometimes they've completely changed their minds. And I have seen that in the middle of cases that I have adjudicated, where you've got a student who is so upset that this happened, and then by the middle, once they've heard the other side, because that's part of the process, you can hear the other side from a secure location, they come into my office and say, I don't want to do this anymore. I've changed my mind. I didn't know that that's what happened to that person, right? I didn't know that that's how they felt. I didn't know that's how I was acting. So sometimes those processes can change. It's a beautiful thing, but that's not easy. Okay. So here's what I want to tell you about the Title IX process. This is from start to finish, okay? And again, I need you to help convince students what this looks like. So I'm going to get close. So number one, a complaint is filed. And that could be with you, that can be with me, that could be with public safety, that could be with a faculty member, but a complaint has been filed, right? And then a complaint is filed with public safety or a student development staff member by the reporting party. And that's what we start to call a person, the reporting party, right? So that's someone who's reporting a situation. Great. Number two, letter one is sent out. So we have a few form letters in the process because Title IX has to be very prescribed, step by step by step by step, right? So once a complaint is filed, we send letter one to the responding part or the reporting party, and letter one basically says, here are the services that we have provided to you, and here's how you can enact those student conduct processes on this campus. It is not that we are now moving forward with conduct, it's just showing them how to do it. It gives them the power, right? It gives them the choice. So that's step number two. Step number two also includes that they can have interim safety measures. So if we need to move people out of residence hall rooms, we can. If we need to move people out of classes, we can. So it depends what that reporting party wants to see happen. So again, a lot of choice, which is a really good thing, right? To give someone control. Number three, if the reporting party wants to then do conduct, the other person involved is hereby named the responding party. So we have the reporting party, who made the complaint, and then we have the responding party. Cool? Great. So that's step number three. And then a member of student development, Paul, myself, Dean Prangy, then will reach out to the responding party to take a report, and the responding party is notified that an investigation will then ensue. So again, we start the process, right? Number four, if requested, a campus no contact order is issued to both parties. So what is that? What does that mean? A campus no contact order. Colin?
You guys just can't hang out.
Yeah, okay, well here, yes, Colin, that's true. So, but it's a little bit more involved than that, okay? So you can't hang out. What else can't you do? Yep, so you can't text each other. You can't talk on the phone. You can't
tell other people either.
Good job. You can't tell other people. You can't talk about it. What else can't you do? Well, we can, if the reporting party wants, we can remove folks from class. But if they don't choose that, then we wouldn't. It's up to them, right? Because we have to be equitable. So we can't, so think about it this way. And this is like kind of what Title IX was saying, right? We can't just remove someone from class if they need that class. We have to kind of find a solution for some of these things, and that's what makes it not easy. So if there's another section, maybe we can make that happen, but it's some of that stuff. Okay, so we know we can't talk on the phone, we can't hang out, we can't text back and forth, we can't tell other people about it. What else? What else does it mean to have like no contact order? What else do you think? Yeah. Okay, so typically there's like a perimeter set around like who can be in the same room or how far you have to be from each other. This also goes into friends. So if Paul and I are like good friends, and we are, it would then say your friends can't talk to this person. Your friends can't talk to the friends of that person. Hi, welcome to Millikan, 1,800 students. How tricky is that? Pretty darn tricky, right? And especially even if it's in like fraternity and sorority communities, that can be really tricky, right? That is hard stuff to figure out, but that's like what part of the process is, okay? So again, not an easy process. So that's number 4. Number 5, the investigator, who is a professional staff member, calls in folks connected and interviews each person. So if there are only 2 people, so if we go back to this thing where it happened on campus, there are only 2 people, then we would only investigate those 2 people. But if they were hanging out earlier in the night, there were 4 people there, and then they went to another party and there were 3 people there, we would have to investigate all of those people. So this is where it takes a long time. You have to call in, you have to sit one-on-one, you have to say, can you tell me what happened the night of whatever? And we have to take notes, and we have to do meeting notes and all of that stuff. That can take forever. So we have to investigate all these folks, right? So number 6 Investigator collects all of the reports and then gives the information to the Title IX conduct officer, which is either Paul or Dean Prangy. So I'm an investigator. I would investigate, type up all these notes. I would not make a decision. I am just investigating, right? So I'm a non-biased, just listening to you, typing up notes. And then I say, here, Paul, here's a gift. Boom. And put it on his desk. So then Paul is then that person. So that's the Title IX conduct officer. Once the investigation is finished, once I'm done with my job, the conduct officer proceeds to do a charge letter. So based on what I have given Paul, he has to make a decision on what kind of charge is then being put on that responding party. So Paul would look at those notes and say, okay, we are going to charge the responding party with a violation of like student conduct code number 1.2, number 2.6, and then we include that, we put it in the letter, and we send it to that responding party. And so then the charges are given formally to that person. Up until this point, no charges have been made. So up until this point, which is way down here, we are just fact-finding. That's all we're doing, right? So nothing officially has happened at that point, really. So then number 8, conduct officer organizes a hearing. So this, again, this could be anything from administrative, so the person just comes in and meets with Paul, or it could be a hearing panel, depending on how serious the situation is, or how involved. And that could be 4 or 5 faculty or staff members that have been trained, okay? That's number 8. Then 9, based on that hearing, sanctions are determined, and because this is a Title IX case, the reporting party is notified of the sanctions for the responding party. I'm going to go over that again. So because this is Title IX, if sanctions, and what are sanctions again? Consequences, the outcome. So sanctions, if sanctions are being given, the responding party gets to find out what the reporting party is given. So again, so do you get that? I want to be very clear about that, right? Okay. Here's what's also really important. That is not typically how student conduct works. We don't typically tell the outcome to other students involved. But because of its Title IX, we have to be very transparent in that process, because that's what, again, that dear colleague letter said. We have to, continue to educate people on what's going on. And then number 10, the institution works to repair the harm that has happened between those folks who are involved. So we're not kicking people off campus. That rarely happens. In fact, we are just working with folks to make sure that harm has been repaired, people are feeling okay and safe and supported on campus. Safe and supported is always that root of where we are. Okay? So that's the process, 1 to 10. That's how it works. And we have 60 days to do this. And for a case where it only involves 2 or 3 people, that's a very decent timeline. But for a case that involves 20 people, and we are close to the end of the semester, that is crunch time for us. And folks, this stuff always happens at the end of the semester. I don't know what it is. Isn't it true? It's March, April, May. And I'm like, oh my God, March, April, May. We have 20 days left. We've got to get this done in 20 days, right? So we have a due diligence to finish that process. Any questions about this? 1 through 10? Clear as mud? Okay, so it comes back to you. So you are a paraprofessional staff member. You are a mandated reporter. You are also a resource, which is why we're talking about this now, because you've been hired for the positions. So this starts today, right? So you are a resource, which means you can help educate people about the process. You don't have to be a professional. You don't have to have 1 through 10 memorized. I don't have 1 through 10 memorized. I don't. And in fact, this is something that I'm kind of happy about, is I kind of forget the process sometimes if I don't have to do it all the time. So there are times where I call Paul and say, hey, what's my next step? What do we have to do next? Because I forget this. I haven't done it in a while. Thank God. Thank God I don't have to do this every day, right? Thank God I'm not trying student conduct cases every single day. But I have to really remember the process. So don't feel like you have to be an expert. You just have to tell them where to go next. You're also an advocate. What does that mean? What does it mean to be an advocate? So let's say someone comes to you. Yep.
You're using your voice for someone who can't really use theirs.
Yeah, right? So you are using your voice for someone who's afraid to use theirs, or not sure how to use theirs, or doesn't know what that means. You are in this person's corner. You don't have to be unbiased. Now I'm not, but you have to keep your professional hat on, right? So you can't be posting on Facebook, I support so-and-so, and they're a victim, and blah, 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 blah. That is not your role. In fact, I will call you into my office faster than whatever. if I saw that, right? Because you need to be mature and you need to be professional, but you can be that person's advocate, you can be in that person's corner, and then you hand it off to the unbiased person here, right, through the process. Again, we've talked about mandated reporter, and then you have to be the one that carries the narrative about this process. So the reason we're talking about it today is because I need you to be the person that talks about how to report at Millikan, so I don't have students in March coming into my office to say, I didn't know who to turn to. What do you mean you didn't know who to turn to? You can turn to anybody, right? Great. Okay, so the only other bit is this brief video that we show about the Jeannie Cleary Act. This is the very last piece, folks, right? So can anyone tell me about the Jeannie Cleary Act? Yes?
Security.
Good job. Security on college campuses. Good job, Joanna. So it's this whole idea of why Millikan has to report what Millikan has to report. And it goes back to the Jeannie Cleary Act. And so we're going to show this brief video.
For their child, a safe, comfortable place where their daughter could learn and grow. In 1985, the Clearys were looking at colleges with Jean. They eventually settled on Lehigh University in scenic Bethlehem, Pennsylvania.
She just loved the campus, and I just loved the fact that it was 1 hour and 20 minutes away. She was excited. Oh, she was. She was in the safest place she possibly could have been in.
On a Saturday night in April of 1986, nobody saw the harm in propping open the door here at Jean's residence hall. After all, it made coming and going much easier. But then, the unimaginable happened. As night turned to morning, another student came in through that propped door. But he wasn't coming home from a night out. He was looking for rooms to rob. Jean was asleep in her bed when he came in to kill her.
He did everything. He strangled her to death, but he also raped her.
Still personal to me. Still, something that I'll never forget. It's the case file for the time period.
Ed Shook was a public safety officer when Jean was killed, and now is the chief of police at Lehigh University.
It was my case. I was the lead investigator from Lehigh, along with two state troopers at the time when the incident occurred. And we put a lot of time and effort into a tragic incident, very tragic. My feelings always about for the Cleary family.
At that time, no laws required universities or colleges to track or disclose crimes that occurred on
That is
campus.
really important. This is the mid-'80s, and no law required universities to talk about what had happened on their campus.
Nobody would know that. Nobody knew anything. But I knew I was going to have to do something to try to prevent other parents, other students of this eternal nightmare.
Okay, so there's more to that video, but that is the main part. So in the 80s, there was nothing that said to college campuses that you have to report the crime statistics that happen on your campus. And so the Clearys sent their daughter to Lehigh University thinking it was the safest place in the world. They'd never heard anything wrong about it. And here they had a lot of kind of like these negative statistics saying that harm had happened on their college campuses. So after Jeannie's death, so Jeannie died in her residence hall room when someone broke in, they strangled her, they raped her, and then they stole things, right? They went to court and pushed and pushed and pushed for years for this act to be passed. And basically said that campuses have to disclose the violent things that happen. And so to this day, it's called the Jeannie Cleary Act, named after Jeannie. And campuses have to report what happens on campus. Anything from assault, to sexual assault, to theft, to fire violations. What else? What else is in there? Person-on-person violence. It's all that kind of stuff, right? So that's a lot of the RAs. The RAs go through and do safety checks. That's why, okay? So anytime there's a conduct case, Paul keeps a file on it, Residence Life keeps a file. They hand it over to public public safety every month. And then public safety, if you get on their website, you can find all of the statistics for all of these years. And so Chris Ballard would say, yep, we publish it. It's the stuff that'll put you to sleep at night. If you're an insomniac, like you can get on and read and fall asleep. It's like really boring, dry stuff, but we have to publish it, right? So how do all the paraprofessionals uphold this like campus safety? So how do you uphold campus safety? What do you think? Yeah?
Passing stuff up the chain.
So pass stuff up, so talk to people. So when something happens, tell people, right? That's great. What else? Some really like tangible physical things. What can you do to like promote campus safety?
Set clear expectations during new student welcome.
Yep, so tell people what the expectations are during those first floor meetings, those first meetings in your edge groups, in new student welcome week. So tell them the expectations so they can uphold them. What are other tangible things that you can do?
Close doors that are propped.
Yeah, okay, so yes, especially Red Life staff, but anyone else, if you see a prop door, shut that door. It has no business being propped. I don't care if someone gets locked out, I don't care, right? So like that is someone's home, that is their safety, it's the front door. Unprop the doors. That's also in your fraternity and sorority facilities. It's anywhere that you live, right? What else can you do? Tangible things. Yep.
Make sure you give them reasons why these things are happening.
Yep, so tell people, okay, the reason I did this is because of this. Yep, what else? It's like a really easy one. Like we see in the airports. See something, say something.
Body scanners?
Fair, yeah. But like see something, say something, right? So there are, have you ever seen the TV series, the What Would You Do? It's like, I love them. I love them so much. Okay, so there's this one that they show a hallway in like an office, or like a school, I can't remember what it was. And they're like, they set a smoke detector, or a smoke machine under the door, so there's smoke billowing out under the door in the hallway. And they have people walk by, see the smoke, look at the door, and continue to walk by. No one, it's like 2 people address that there could be a fire behind this door, like you learned in 4th grade, right? And so if you see something, aka smoke billowing out from underneath the door, or something suspicious in the corner, right? Some unattended bag, say something, tell someone, like Colin said, put it up the chain. Other campus safety related types of things. What else? Like common things you'd see, yeah. Yep.
Don't let just anyone in.
Yep. So if you're at the door, do not feel guilty to let someone in that building. I don't care. If they don't live, nope. So you go out, do not let someone in. Yep, what else?
Whenever you have guests over at your residence hall, always make sure they're accompanied by whoever lives in their residence.
Good job. So like accompany guests, and that's anywhere you live. Other things that are not residence hall based that I think is important. If you see someone like creating a muck, I'm just going to say that, like creating a muck, right? So tell someone, say something that, hey, someone's over there that is doing something that probably shouldn't happen. Okay, great. I would say even we have had laptops just walk away. So in the library, someone's working, you see them working at a table, they like go to take a restroom break or whatever. Number one, shame on them from leaving their laptop, right? I get it. But if you see someone come up who is not at a table, close the laptop and walk off with it. Hi, say something. Tell someone. Right? Yeah, no, but this is like, the reason I bring it up is because they've happened. These are things that happen, right? Same thing with book bags and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so you get it. So you can help with campus safety even if you are not an RA and live in a residence hall. So campus safety is all of us. That is completely all of us. Yes?
Also, like making sure that they have all the members of the public safety.
Good. Yep. So so again, it goes back to those like first floor meetings, first edge meetings, first new student welcome week meetings. Do you have public safety plugged in your phone? Is it somewhere easy to get to? Do you have health and counseling plugged in your phone? You as an RA or a staff member, do you have your supervisor's phone number in your phone? I give that to the PMs, right? So I will give it and say, I want you to call me. I want you to have that number just in case you need it. Okay, so you get it, yeah? Okay, cool. Okay, folks, so we are at the end. So we are, again, back to that balancing act. 125.
Nice.
What do you need? What questions do you have? What can I do for you? Because this is the Title IX presentation. We will probably touch on it slightly in individual staffs. The RAs for sure, because this is so student conduct based. And we wanted everybody to hear this information today. We think it's really important. Yeah.
So with this like sex-based and gender-based stuff, like how does like our trans community, like how is that?
Well, okay, so Heidi's question. How do our trans community fit into this sex and gender-based narrative? This like language that is very sex and gender-based. So Title IX can even be, I'm being misgendered in a class. So I identify as male, but my professor keeps calling me she. And I've reminded the professor many times that I prefer my preferred pronoun is he or they, right? That is a Title IX violation. And we can go through the Title IX process for a violation just like that. Yep. So this isn't just sexual misconduct, that's just how we see it transpire on our campus the most. But this could be any type of gender-based discrimination, any type. And just because we see the word gender, it is not, that, it's not he or she, it's not like man, woman, right? So it can be anybody in the umbrella.